The cold is a constant companion. It seeps through the chinks in the stone walls of her cottage, a damp, persistent chill that settles deep in her bones. Seraphine is used to it. She has grown accustomed to the way it ghosts across the floorboards, the way it makes the rough wool of her blanket feel inadequate. Loneliness is colder. That is a chill that no fire can ward off. She stares into the meager flames dancing in the hearth, their light flickering across the scarred wood of her small table, the simple clay bowl from which she ate her thin stew. The wind howls outside, a mournful cry that sounds like all the sorrow in the world given voice. It is the sound of the great northern woods, the formidable ancient forest that crowds the edges of her small, reclaimed patch of land. Most people fear the woods. They call it the Wolfwood, the Shadowlands, a place where things older than memory still stir. Seraphine sought it out. Because the monsters in the forest are honest in their savagery. They do not smile at you and whisper promises of forever while their eyes hold the cold calculation of a merchant weighing grain. They do not call you beloved one day and discard you like refuse the next. The memory rises unbidden, sharp and cruel as a shard of glass. Lord Maximilian, his handsome face, the way his lips curved when he smiled, a perfect, practiced arc of charm. He had promised her the world, a title, a home, a family. She, a woman of no significant birth, had been swept away by the sheer force of his attention, and she had believed him. She had given him her heart, her trust, her body, all of it. Then came the pronouncements from the royal physicians. Barren, a word like a brand seared into her soul. Useless to a man whose ambition required a legitimate heir. Maximilian's charm had curdled overnight. The whispers started then. That she was not just barren, but unhinged, prone to fits of melancholy, not right in the head. It was easier for society to believe her mad than to believe a man of his standing could be so cruel. He had cast her out not with a bang, but with the quiet, suffocating indifference of a man swatting away a fly. And everyone had let him. They had looked away, their gazes sliding past her as if she were already a ghost. The women who had once envied her now pitied her with a smug, sharp-edged sympathy. The men saw her as damaged goods. So she had fled. She had taken the small inheritance her grandfather, the old village herbalist, had left her and bought this forgotten cottage on the very edge of the kingdom, where the civilized world frayed into wilderness. She had chosen isolation over the slow death of 1,000 daily cuts of pity and scorn. Here, her only judge was the wind. Her only companion, the cold. A new sound cuts through the wind's howl, a sharp, cracking noise. A branch, perhaps, heavy with ice. She tenses, her hand stilling on the rim of her bowl. She is always listening. It is the first rule of survival out here. The forest is not empty. Another sound, a low, pained groan. It is not the wind. It is not a falling branch. It is animal, and it is close, too close. Her heart begins a frantic trapped bird rhythm against her ribs. Deer? A boar? No. The sound is too deep, resonating with a weight that speaks of something large, something powerful. A wolf. The thought is a sliver of ice in her veins. The woods are named for them for a reason. Great, shadow-pelted beasts that move like smoke and hunt with a terrifying intelligence. She has heard tales from the few trappers who dare to venture this far. Tales of wolves the size of ponies, with eyes that burn like embers in the dark. She rises slowly, every muscle screaming at her to douse the fire, to bar the door, to hide in the root cellar until morning. That is the logical thing to do, the sane thing. But then a third sound reaches her, piercing the deep groan like a needle. A whimper. High-pitched, desperate, young. Seraphine's breath catches in her throat. A pup. She finds herself moving toward the door, her actions divorced from the frantic warnings of her mind. Her grandfather's voice echoes in her memory, a low, gentle rumble from a lifetime ago. Compassion is not a weakness, Seraphine. It is the strength that holds the world together. Never let them teach you otherwise. They had tried. Oh, they had tried. Her hand touches the rough wood of the door. Outside, the deep groan comes again, followed by that heartbreaking, childish cry for help. She thinks of herself, standing alone in Maximilian's grand hall after he had dismissed her, how no one would meet her eye, how no one stepped forward. The desolation of that moment, the feeling of being utterly, completely abandoned by the world. I will not be like them. The vow is a whisper of fire in the cold landscape of her heart. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she lifts the heavy iron bar. The door creaks open on protesting hinges, letting in a swirl of snow and a blast of frigid air that bites at her skin. And there, at the edge of the flickering firelight spilling from her doorway, she sees them. Her breath is stolen from her lungs. The tales were not exaggerated. He is immense, a creature of midnight and shadow bigger than any wolf she could have possibly imagined. His fur is the color of a starless sky, matted and dark with something wet. Blood. A great ragged gash runs along his flank, oozing slowly onto the pristine white of the snow. His head is low, but even in his exhaustion, he radiates an aura of breathtaking power. But it is his eyes that seize her. They are not the mindless eyes of a beast. They are amber, intelligent, and filled with a desperate, agonizing pain. And they are fixed on her. Tucked beneath his massive chin, shivering violently, is a small bundle of fur. A pup. Its eyes are wide with terror, its tiny whimpers the sound that had pierced Seraphine's heart. The great wolf's gaze holds hers, and it is not a threat. It is a plea, a silent, desperate negotiation between two wounded creatures at the edge of the world. He does not growl, he does not snarl. He simply holds her gaze, and in that amber fire she sees a reflection of her own brokenness, her own fight for survival. Her fear is a living thing, a cold knot in her stomach. Every instinct screams at her to slam the door, to run. This is a predator, the apex of this wild world. Letting it near is madness, but the pup whimpers again, a tiny lost sound in the vast, cold wilderness. And the wolf's gaze does not waver. It is a raw, humbling thing to witness. This magnificent, powerful being brought low and begging for mercy from a lone woman in a stone cottage. Her mind flashes with images of men in fine coats turning their backs, of doors closing softly but firmly in her face, of polite, empty words that offered no comfort, no aid. She will not be one of them. All right, she whispers, the word a puff of white in the frozen air. She is not sure if she is speaking to the wolf or to herself. All right, Come on then. She steps back, pulling the door wider. It is an invitation, a crossing of a boundary she had sworn to keep sacred. Her safe place, her sanctuary from the world, now open to the most dangerous thing in it. The great wolf watches her for a long moment, as if gauging the sincerity of her offer. Then, with a pained grunt, he begins to move. He hauls his massive body forward, dragging his injured leg. The effort is immense. He nudges the pup ahead of him with his nose, urging it toward the square of light and warmth. The pup, emboldened by its parents' prompting, takes a few hesitant, stumbling steps before scurrying across the threshold and huddling near the warmth of the hearth, still trembling. Then the wolf follows. He collapses just inside the doorway, his body hitting the floorboards with a heavy, final-sounding thud. His breathing is a ragged, shallow rasp. The metallic, coppery scent of his blood fills the small cottage, thick and cloying. Seraphine closes the door, shutting out the wind and the howling dark. She slides the bar back into place. The sound is heavy, definitive. She is locked inside with a dying giant and its child. For a moment, she can only stand there, her back pressed against the cold wood of the door, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her breastbone. What have I done? The question is a silent scream in her mind. This is suicide, a foolish, sentimental act that will be her end. But then her gaze falls on the pup, curled into a tight ball by the fire, its tiny body shaking. And she looks at the great wolf, his magnificent form laid low, his amber eyes clouded with pain, but still fixed on his child, a silent, unwavering sentinel even on the brink of death. Her training, the knowledge passed down from her grandfather, clicks into place. It overrides the fear, giving her purpose, a path through the terror. Okay, she says, her voice steadier now. She speaks softly, as if soothing a frightened horse. Let's see what we're dealing with. She approaches slowly, her hands held out, palms open to show she means no harm. The wolf watches her every move, a low rumble starting deep in his chest as she nears his flank. It is not a growl of aggression, but of pain. I know, she murmurs. I know it hurts, but I have to look. I can't help if I don't look. She kneels beside him, the scent of blood and wet fur and wildness overwhelming her senses. The gash is long and deep, torn into the powerful muscle of his haunch. It's jagged, not the clean slice of a hunter's knife, but the brutal work of claws or teeth. Another predator. Something big enough to challenge this giant. The bleeding is steady. Too steady. If she can't stop it, he will be dead by morning. I need to clean it, she tells him, her voice a low, continuous stream of sound. It's going to sting. I'm sorry. She moves to her stores, her grandfather's legacy of dried herbs and tinctures. She finds what she needs. A clean cloth, a bowl of hot water from the kettle over the fire, a bundle of yarrow to staunch the bleeding, and a poultice of comfrey and calendula to fight infection and promote healing. When she returns, the wolf has not moved, but his eyes follow her every action with that unnerving intelligence. He seems to be listening, understanding not her words, perhaps, but their intent. She dips the cloth into the hot water, wrings it out, and hesitates. This will be the test. If he snaps, if his pain overrides his control, her arm will be forfeit. Taking a breath, she gently, so gently, presses the warm, damp cloth to the edges of the wound. The wolf flinches violently, a full-body tremor. A strangled cry escapes his throat, and the rumble in his chest intensifies. His powerful muscles bunch beneath her hand, and for a terrifying second, she sees the glint of his teeth. But he does not snap. He holds himself rigid, enduring it. He turns his head away, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed on the pup by the fire. He is holding on for his child. Relief washes through Seraphine, so potent it makes her feel weak. "Good boy," she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. "You're a good, brave boy." Working quickly now, she cleans the wound as best she can, her touch firm but gentle. He trembles throughout, his ragged breaths filling the silence of the room, but he remains preternaturally still. Once the wound is clean, she packs the shredded yarrow leaves into it, applying firm pressure. The dark flow of blood begins to slow, then slow further, congealing into a dark, sluggish ooze. Finally, she applies the thick, fragrant poultice of crushed herbs, covering it with a larger swath of clean linen she tears from an old tunic. She has no way to properly bandage a creature of this size, so she can only hope the poultice stays in place. Her work done, she sits back on her heels, exhausted. The adrenaline that had fueled her drains away, leaving a bone-deep weariness in its wake. The great wolf lets out a long, shuddering sigh. He lifts his head slightly and looks at her. The raw pain in his eyes is now mingled with something else. Something that looks disturbingly like gratitude. He gives a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of his head before resting it back on the floor. Seraphine's heart gives a strange, painful lurch. She turns her attention to the pup. It has stopped whimpering and is watching her with wide, intelligent eyes, the same amber shade as its father's. It looks hungry. She has some leftover broth from her stew. She warms it, pouring it into a shallow bowl. She places it on the floor near the pup, who sniffs it tentatively before beginning to lap at it with a tiny pink tongue. The small domestic sound of the pup drinking broth in her cottage is so surreal, so at odds with the massive, bleeding predator lying on her floor, that Seraphine almost laughs. The hysteria is close, bubbling just beneath the surface. She forces it down. She is tired. She needs to sleep. But where? Her bed is a small cot in the corner, but she cannot bring herself to lie down, to be so vulnerable. She settles for her chair by the fire, pulling her blanket around her shoulders. She will watch. Just for a while. The fire crackles. The pup, its belly full, curls up again, this time pressing against the warm bulk of its father's chest. The great wolf is breathing more deeply now, more evenly. His eyes are closed. Sleeping or unconscious? She can't be sure. The night stretches on, thick and silent, but for the sounds of breathing. Seraphine watches the rise and fall of the giant's chest, the twitch of the pup's paws as it dreams. A strange, fragile peace settles over the little cottage. It is a peace born of shared crisis, of a truce declared between the wild and the wounded. She had opened her door to death, and instead had invited in a strange, broken family. She does not know their story, where they came from, what monstrous thing had attacked them. She only knows that in their desperation, they had chosen her. And in her loneliness, she had chosen them. As her eyelids grow heavy and she finally drifts into a fitful, shallow sleep, Her last coherent thought is not of fear, but of a profound and aching curiosity. Who are you? The days that follow fall into a strange, new rhythm, a routine built around the needs of her two wild guests. Seraphine wakes with the pale, gray light of dawn, her body stiff from sleeping in the chair. Her first glance is always to the spot by the door. The great wolf is always there, awake before her, his amber eyes watching her with that unnerving, silent intensity. The pup is usually still asleep, nestled against him. She names them in her mind. It feels foolish, sentimental, but she needs a way to think of them. The great wolf is Theron. The name feels right, strong, ancient. The pup is Zephyr, small, bright. The morning routine is always the same. She checks Theron's wound. To her astonishment, it is healing at a rate that defies all logic. What should have taken weeks to close is already knitting itself together. The angry red has faded, and new, healthy tissue is forming. It is unnatural, magical. She cleans it anyway, reapplying the poultice, her hands moving with a practiced gentleness. Theron endures her touch with a stoicism that continues to awe her. He never growls, never flinches anymore. He simply watches her, a low, soft rumble sometimes starting in his chest. A sound she is beginning to interpret not as a threat, but as a form of communication. A rumbling purr of contentment. After tending to the father, she feeds the son. Zephyr is a delight. A small, energetic creature full of yips and clumsy pounces. He devours the broth and bits of softened meat she gives him, his tail a blur of motion. He seems to have adopted her as a second parent, often tumbling over her feet or nudging his small, wet nose into her hand, demanding attention. She finds herself smiling. A real, genuine smile that reaches her eyes. She cannot remember the last time she smiled. During the day, a quiet domesticity settles over the cottage. Seraphine goes about her chores, mending, cooking, chopping wood from her small pile. And Theron watches. Always, he watches. He lies by the door, a silent, colossal guardian, his gaze tracking her every movement. It should be unnerving, but it is not. It is comforting. She has never felt so thoroughly seen and yet so completely unjudged. She starts talking to him. At first, it is just practical things. I'm going to fetch more water, Theron. I won't be long. Or, this stew should be ready soon. I hope Zephyr likes rabbit. But the silence of the cottage, once a symbol of her isolation, becomes an invitation. His quiet, steady presence is a vessel she can pour her sorrow into, and it will not overflow. One afternoon, while darning a hole in her tunic, she finds herself speaking of Maximilian. The words come out in a halting, rusty trickle at first, then in a flood. He said he loved the way I saw the world, she whispers, her needle stilling in her hands. She stares at the wall, but she is seeing another place, another time. He said I was different from the other court ladies, less polished, more real. Theron's head is up, his ears are pricked forward, he is listening. He made me believe it was a virtue. My grandfather, he raised me to be practical, to see the value in small, quiet things, in healing, in kindness. Maximilian said he admired that. She lets out a bitter, humorless laugh. It was a lie. All of it. He didn't admire it. He saw it as something he could own, something quaint, like a rustic painting for his collection. She traces the seam of her tunic with a fingertip. When the physician told us about me, about not being able to have children, I saw the look in his eyes. It was like a shutter coming down. The warmth was just gone. And he looked at me like I was a faulty piece of equipment, a mare that couldn't foal. A tear escapes, hot and traitorous, and rolls down her cheek. She dashes it away angrily. He didn't even have the decency to be cruel to my face. He just had people do it for him. The whispers, the pitying looks. He painted me as fragile, unstable, and everyone believed him because it was easier than believing he was a heartless bastard. She falls silent, her throat tight with unshed tears. The cottage is quiet save for the crackle of the fire and Zephyr's soft snores. A wetness touches her hand. She looks down. Theron has moved. Silently, despite his size, he has crossed the room and is kneeling beside her chair. His massive head is resting on her knee, and his amber eyes are looking up at her, full of a depth of emotion that a mere animal should not possess. It looks like empathy, like sorrow. He nudges her hand with his nose, gently, then licks away the tear track on her skin with his warm, rough tongue. The gesture is so unexpected, so tender, it shatters the dam of her composure. A sob breaks from her, then another. She buries her face in her hands and weeps. She weeps for the girl who believed in promises, for the woman who was discarded, for the years of suffocating loneliness. Through it all, Theron stays with her. His solid, warm weight against her leg is an anchor in the storm of her grief. He does not move, does not make a sound, simply offers his silent, steadfast presence until the storm passes. When her sobs finally subside into shuddering breaths, she lifts her head. She feels hollowed out, but also lighter. She looks down at the great wolf, whose head is still resting on her knee. Tentatively, her hand still trembling, she reaches out and strokes his head. His fur is thick and surprisingly soft beneath her fingers. She runs her hand down his powerful neck, over his broad shoulders. He leans into her touch, a deep, resonant rumble starting in his chest. It vibrates through her, a soothing, primal sound. It is the first time she has willingly touched him beyond the necessity of tending his wound. It is not born of pity or of duty, but of a genuine, burgeoning affection, a connection forged in shared silence and unexpected comfort. In that moment, the fear she held for him dies completely. It is replaced by a fierce, protective tenderness. He is not just a wolf. He is Theron, her friend, her silent confessor, her protector. A few days later, the first real snow of the season arrives. It falls thick and fast, a silent white curtain that erases the world, cocooning the cottage in an even deeper isolation. Her woodpile outside is running low. She will have to brave the storm to bring more in from the lean-to. She pulls on her thickest cloak and boots. "I'll be right back," she tells Theron, who watches her from his usual spot. He rises to his feet, a low whine in his throat. He does not like her leaving. "It's all right," she soothes, patting his head. "I'm just going to the woodshed. I can see it from the window." She steps outside into a world of swirling white. The wind is sharp, biting, and the snow is already calf-deep. She fights her way to the small lean-to, her arms protesting as she gathers a heavy load of split logs. As she turns to head back, a shape materializes out of the blizzard. At first, She thinks it is a trick of the light, a snow-laden branch, but then it moves, and her blood runs cold. It is a man. No, two men, wrapped in heavy furs, their faces red with cold. They carry swords at their belts, and their sigil, a silver hawk on a field of blue, is one she recognizes with a jolt of pure terror. It is the sigil of House Maximilian. One of the men steps forward, his eyes narrowed against the snow. You? The woman from the cottage. Seraphine's heart hammers against her ribs. She stands frozen, the firewood clutched to her chest like a shield. What do you want? Her voice is thin, stolen by the wind. The man smirks, a cruel twist of his lips. Lord Maximilian sent us. He's been worried about you, alone out here. He requests your presence back in the city. Requests. It is a command wrapped in the thinnest veil of courtesy. I'm not going back, she says, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. That wasn't a choice, the second man says, stepping up beside the first. He is bigger, more brutish. Lord Maximilian is a forgiving man. He's willing to overlook your flight. He'll find a place for you. A quiet place. Out of sight. A convent or an asylum. A place to hide his shame, his inconvenient barren lover. The blood drains from her face. No, she says, shaking her head. I will not go. The first man's patience snaps. Listen, you crazy bitch. We've been tracking a wounded beast for the King's Guard for 3 days in this God's-forsaken blizzard. We are cold, we are tired, and we are not in the mood to argue. You are coming with us, one way or another. He reaches for her. A blur of black explodes from the cottage door. It happens so fast, Seraphine can barely process it. One moment, the man's hand is reaching for her arm. The next, he is screaming, flying backward through the air to land with a sickening crunch in a snowdrift. Theron stands over him, a vision of pure, primal fury. He is no longer the placid, patient creature from the cottage. He is a demon of the storm, his fur bristling, his lips peeled back from his teeth in a silent, terrifying snarl. A low growl, like the sound of grinding stone, rips from his chest. It is a sound that promises death. The second man, frozen in shock for a heartbeat, draws his sword with a panicked yell. The steel shrieks as it leaves the scabbard. He lunges, a clumsy, fear-driven attack. Theron moves with a speed and grace that is impossible for a creature his size. He sidesteps the thrust effortlessly, his massive body a black shadow against the white snow. He does not even seem to consider the man a threat. His focus, his entire being, is on the space between the man and Seraphine. He is a living wall of protective rage. The guard, emboldened by his own terror, swings his sword wildly. The blade catches Theron high on the shoulder. It is a shallow, glancing blow, but it slices through fur and flesh. Theron roars. It is not a sound of pain, but of pure, unadulterated fury. The sound rips through the air, vibrating in Seraphine's bones. He lunges. His jaws close around the man's sword arm. There is a sickening snap of bone, and the man screams, a high, thin sound that is quickly cut off as Theron shakes his head once, a short, violent motion, and throws the man like a rag doll. He lands in a heap near his companion, clutching his mangled arm, his sword lost in the snow. Theron turns, his amber eyes burning with a lethal fire. He takes a step toward the two whimpering, terrified men. "No!" Seraphine screams, the word torn from her. She does not know why she says it. They deserve it. They threatened her. But the thought of Theron, her Theron, killing them, she cannot bear it. "Theron, no, stop!" At the sound of his name, the wolf hesitates. He glances back at her, the bloodlust in his eyes warring with the familiar intelligence she knows. He is panting, a fresh wound bleeding freely onto his shoulder, staining the white snow crimson. The first man, recovering his wits, sees his chance. His eyes are wide with terror and hatred. He scrambles in the snow, his hand finding the hilt of his fallen partner's sword. With a desperate cry, he lunges forward, not at the wolf, but at its weakness. At Seraphine. It all happens in a terrible slow-motion ballet. She sees the man's face, contorted with fear. She sees the sword, a sliver of dark metal against the snow. She sees Theron turning, his eyes widening in horror as he realizes the man's target. He is too far away. He will not make it in time. Without thinking, without hesitation, Seraphine moves. She throws herself forward, her body slamming into Theron's. She wraps her arms around his massive neck, shielding his wounded shoulder with her own body, turning her back to the charging man. She closes her eyes, bracing for the bite of cold steel. She hears a roar of absolute rage from Theron, a sound of pure anguish. She hears the man cry out in shock. She hears a strange, shimmering sound, like 1,000 tiny bells ringing at once. But she feels no pain. She dares to open her eyes. The world has gone silent. The wind has dropped. The snow has stopped falling. The man with the sword is frozen in place, his arm raised, his face a mask of utter mind-shattering disbelief. He is staring at what is beneath her, at what she is clinging to. Seraphine follows his gaze. She looks down. She is not clinging to a wolf. The shoulder beneath her cheek is not covered in black fur, but is smooth, pale skin. The neck her arms are wrapped around is not a thick, roughed column of muscle, but the strong, corded neck of a man. The body she is shielding is no longer that of a great beast, but a human form, long-limbed and powerfully built, sprawled in the snow. A man, a naked man, bleeding from a fresh sword cut on his shoulder. His long black hair fanned out around his head like a dark halo against the snow. He pushes himself up on one elbow, his movements fluid and filled with a dangerous grace. He turns his head, and his eyes, the same burning, intelligent amber she knows so well, meet hers. His face is all harsh planes and sharp angles, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. High cheekbones, a strong jaw dusted with dark stubble, a mouth that looks like it was carved from granite. It is a face made for command, a face made for kings. And it is a face she recognizes. It is the face from the royal portraits that had been posted in every town and village for the last month. The face of the new reclusive Alpha King of the Northern Territories, King Lysander. Theron. Her breath leaves her in a rush. The strength goes out of her limbs. The world tilts on its axis, spinning into a vortex of white snow and black hair and impossible burning amber eyes. The last thing she hears before the darkness claims her is her name, spoken in a voice like rough velvet and crashing thunder. Seraphine. She wakes to the smell of wood smoke and chamomile. The world comes back to her slowly in soft, blurry pieces. She is warm, impossibly, deliciously warm. She is lying on something soft, her cot, and she is covered not just with her own thin wool blanket, but with several thick, heavy furs that smell of pine and cold air and something else, something musky and distinctly masculine. She opens her eyes. The light in the cottage is dim, lit only by the low-burning fire. Outside, the world is dark. Night has fallen. A small sound draws her attention. A sniffle. She turns her head. Sitting on a small stool beside her cot is a little boy, no older than 4 or 5. He has a shock of unruly black hair and big, solemn amber eyes. He is wearing one of her own oversized tunics, which swamps his small frame. He looks at her with a worried expression, then gives another small sniffle. Zephyr. The realization hits her with the force of a physical blow. The pup, the little boy, is the pup. Her gaze darts around the small room, her heart beginning to pound a frantic, panicked rhythm. And then she sees him. He is standing by the hearth, his back to her. He is dressed in a pair of her grandfather's old trousers, which are ridiculously short on him, ending mid-calf, and a tunic that stretches tight across the broad expanse of his shoulders and back. He is tall, so much taller than she realized. Even in the ill-fitting clothes, he possesses an aura of raw power and coiled stillness that seems to suck all the air from the room. The king, the wolf, Theron. He is staring into the flames, his posture rigid. The firelight plays over the hard muscles of his back, the sharp line of his jaw. She can see the edge of a clean bandage on his shoulder, stark white against his tanned skin. All the pieces slam together in her mind with a dizzying, sickening clarity. The unnatural healing, the unnerving intelligence, the way he seemed to understand her every word, the fierce, possessive protection, the stories of the northern kings, the alpha line who were said to carry the blood of the ancient wolves who could walk as men or beasts. She had always dismissed them as folk tales, as peasant superstition. They were not tales. She had been sheltering the shifter king and his son. She makes a small, involuntary sound, a choked gasp. He turns. His movement is silent, fluid, predatory. He crosses the small room in 2 long strides and stands over her cot. Seen from this angle, he is immense, overwhelming. His shadow swallows her whole. His face is a mask of stone, but his eyes, those familiar amber eyes, are a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Guilt, regret, pain, and something else, something deeper and more intense that she cannot name. "You are awake," he says. His voice, it is the same deep, rumbling timbre as the contented sound he made as a wolf, but shaped into human words. It is a voice that could command armies or soothe a crying child. It vibrates through her, touching a place deep inside her that has been dormant for years. She can only stare at him, speechless. Her mind is a chaotic swirl of fear and wonder, and 1,000 unanswered questions. "The men," she finally manages to whisper, her throat dry. "What happened to them?" "They fled," he says, his voice flat. "I let them go. For you." The implication is clear. Had it not been for her, they would be dead. He looks away from her, his jaw tight. "I never intended for you to be involved in this. I never intended for you to see." He gestures vaguely at himself, at his human form. I am sorry. Sorry. The word sounds inadequate, foreign on his lips. The little boy, Zephyr, chooses that moment to slip off his stool. He pads over to the cot and gently places a small, warm hand on Seraphine's arm. "Mama hurt?" he asks, his voice a childish lisp, his big eyes full of concern. "Mama!" The word pierces Seraphine's heart. A wave of such profound, aching loss and longing washes over her that it steals her breath. The one word she had resigned herself to never hearing. Theron flinches as if struck. He takes a sharp step back. "Zephyr," he says, his voice harsh. "Do not. She is not." He cannot finish the sentence. The pain in his expression is stark, raw. Seraphine looks from the distraught man to the worried child. And something inside her, something stronger than fear, stronger than the shock, rises up. Her compassion, the very thing that started all of this. She gives Zephyr's hand a gentle squeeze. "I'm all right, sweet boy," she murmurs, her voice thick. "Just a little tired." She offers him a small, shaky smile. She pushes herself into a sitting position, the heavy furs pooling around her waist. She looks directly at Theron, at the king who is trying to hide inside her grandfather's clothes. "You were hurt," she says, her voice gaining strength. "The trackers, they were hunting you." He nods, his gaze fixed on a point on the floor. "A rival pack, hired by enemies at court. They ambushed us during the storm. I managed to kill them, but not before they wounded me. I was losing too. Much blood. My control was slipping. I could not hold my human form. I knew if we did not find shelter, Zephyr would not survive the night." His voice is low, guttural with self-loathing. "I scented your fire, your home. It was a beacon. I did not know who you were. I only knew I had to get my son to safety." He finally lifts his head, and the full force of his gaze hits her. "I put you in unimaginable danger. I can never forgive myself for that." "You saved me," she counters softly. "From Maximilian's men. You were hurt because you were protecting me. It is my nature to protect what is mine." He bites out, the words sharp and clipped. "Mine." The word hangs in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. It resonates with the possessive glint in his eyes, the way he had stood over her, a living shield. And then it all clicks into place. The pull she felt toward him, the profound sense of safety in his presence, the way his proximity soothed the jagged edges of her soul. The stories, the old legends, were not just about shifters. They were about something more. A fated bond. A mate destined and undeniable. The realization is not a lightning strike, but a slow, dawning horror and wonder. All this time she had been talking to him, confessing her deepest pains, touching him, caring for him. And he had known. He must have known. "You knew," she whispers, the accusation clear in her voice. "This whole time. You knew who I was to you?" Agony flashes across his face. He looks like a man being flayed alive. "Yes." The single word is a confession and a condemnation. "From the moment I scented you," he continues, his voice rough with anguish. "That's why I came here. I was not just looking for any shelter. I was looking for you. I have been searching for you since I took the throne. The bond. It called to me." He takes a step toward her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Seraphine, you must understand. My world is not safe. It is full of violence and betrayal. I am king, but my throne is precarious. There are those who would see me dead, who would use you to get to me. I cannot, I will not, drag you into that. His words are a torrent, a desperate attempt to build a wall between them. When this storm breaks, I will take Zephyr, and we will leave. You will be safe here. No one will ever know what happened. I will make sure of it. You can go back to your life. Go back to her life of cold and silence and aching loneliness. The life he and his son had shattered and then filled with a warmth she had forgotten could exist. Anger, hot and sharp, cuts through her shock. It is a righteous anger born of a new and fragile hope he is now trying to extinguish. My life? She says, her voice trembling with a sudden fierce strength. She throws back the furs and swings her legs over the side of the cot, standing to face him. She has to crane her neck to look up at him, but she does not feel small. For the first time in years, she feels powerful. What life are you talking about? The one where I hide from the world because a man decided I was worthless? The one where I spend my days talking to the walls and my nights freezing alone? That is not a life, Theron. It is an existence, a waiting room for death. He flinches at her tone, at the raw truth in her words. I am trying to protect you. He grits out, his control fraying. No! She takes a step closer, poking him in his rock-hard chest with her finger. You are trying to protect yourself. You are so terrified of your world hurting me that you are willing to do the hurting yourself. You are pushing me away, just like everyone else. You are telling me I am too weak, too fragile to stand beside you. That is not what I... It is exactly what you are doing! She cries, her voice ringing with conviction. You looked at me and you saw another liability, another potential wound. Well, I have been wounded before. I survived. I am stronger than you think. She is shaking now, not from fear, but from the sheer force of her own emotions. She has never stood up for herself like this, never fought for what she wanted. For 2 weeks, she says, her voice dropping to a raw, intense whisper. I have felt safer with a giant wolf in my cottage than I ever did in the heart of the city surrounded by so-called civilized men. I have felt more seen by you in your silence than I ever was by a man who claimed to love me. I am not afraid of your world, Theron. I am afraid of you leaving me in this one. Her confession hangs in the air, vulnerable and absolute. Little Zephyr, who has been watching this exchange with wide, fearful eyes, lets out a small sob. He walks forward, his lower lip trembling, and takes Seraphine's hand in one of his. Then he reaches out his other small hand and takes his father's large, calloused one. He pulls them together. He places Seraphine's hand into Theron's. The contact is electric. A jolt of pure energy, of heat and light surges up Seraphine's arm. It is like being struck by lightning and cradled in velvet all at once. She gasps. Theron makes a choked sound, his eyes squeezing shut. His fingers, which had been rigid, instinctively curl around hers, his thumb stroking over her knuckles in a gesture of aching tenderness. When he opens his eyes, the walls are gone. The king is gone. All that is left is the man, his soul naked and raw in his amber gaze. "I did not know a kindness like yours existed," he whispers, his voice thick with a pain that goes far beyond any physical wound. "I was raised on duty and steel. My own mother tried to have me killed for the throne. My world taught me that trust is a fool's game and love is a weapon used against you. Then I found you." He lifts his other hand, his touch hesitant, almost reverent, as he cups her cheek. His thumb brushes away a tear she did not know had fallen. "Every day," he continues, his voice breaking, "I lay on your floor and I watched you. I watched you move. I listened to you hum. I listened to you pour out your heart to a beast you should have feared, and every word was a balm on a wound I did not even know I carried. You healed more than just my flesh, Seraphine." "I was so alone," she whispers back, her own confession a mirror to his. "And then you and Zephyr, you filled up all the empty spaces." He leans down, his forehead pressing against hers. His breath is warm on her lips. She can feel the frantic beat of his heart, or maybe it is her own. They are hammering in unison. "I cannot go back to that silence," she says. "Don't ask me to." "I will not," he breathes, the words a sacred vow. "I cannot. Being without you now, it would be like trying to breathe without air." And then his mouth is on hers. It is not a gentle kiss. It is a collision, a desperate, starved claiming. It is all the unspoken words, all the lonely nights, all the pain and fear and hope poured into one searing, explosive moment. His arms wrap around her, pulling her tight against his hard body, lifting her off her feet. She clings to him, her hands tangling in his long, soft hair, kissing him back with all the pent-up longing of a lifetime. It is a kiss of homecoming, of destiny acknowledged and a future seized. It is the slam of a door on a life of loneliness and the throwing open of a gate to a world of terrifying, beautiful possibilities. When he finally breaks the kiss, they are both breathless, panting. He rests his forehead against hers again, his eyes closed, his expression one of profound, soul-deep relief. He has not just found his queen, he has found his home. And in his arms, Seraphine realizes, so has she. 6 months later, the great hall of the northern citadel is a sea of velvet and steel, of curious and wary faces. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax candles, roasting meat, and the nervous sweat of 1,000 courtiers packed shoulder to shoulder. The coronation, delayed for half a year by the king's mysterious disappearance and recovery, is finally underway. Seraphine stands in the shadows of a great stone archway, watching. She feels like a ghost, an imposter in this world of glittering jewels and whispered political maneuverings. She wears a simple gown of deep forest green, the color of her new life, a stark contrast to the flamboyant silks and satins of the court ladies. They stare at her, their eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and disdain. She is the woods woman, the strange, quiet creature the king brought back with him from his ordeal. They do not know what to make of her. They do not know her place, and so they shun her with practiced ease. It is a familiar feeling, this wall of silent judgment, but it no longer has the power to wound her. Her gaze is fixed on the dais where Theron stands. He is every inch the king today, dressed in black leathers and a heavy mantle of dark gray wolf fur. The crown of his ancestors, a jagged circlet of dark, unpolished iron, rests on his brow. He looks formidable, powerful, and utterly alone. He has spent the last 6 months consolidating his power, rooting out the traitors who hired the rival pack to hunt him. He has been ruthless, decisive, and brilliant. He has secured his throne. But she sees the cost. She sees the tension in his shoulders, the weariness that even she cannot completely soothe away. Zephyr stands beside him, holding his hand. He is dressed in a miniature version of his father's attire, looking small and solemn and brave. Every so often, his amber eyes search the crowd, find her, and he gives her a tiny secret smile. It is the anchor that keeps her steady in this overwhelming sea. The royal chancellor drones on, his voice reciting the ancient lineages and titles. Seraphine barely hears him. She is watching Theron, feeling the invisible thread that connects them, a bond that has only deepened in the intervening months. It is a living thing, a constant current of warmth and love and unwavering support that flows between them, whether they are in the same room or miles apart. Then she sees him. Standing near the front of the crowd, resplendent in silks of blue and silver, is Lord Maximilian. His face is a mask of smug satisfaction, his posture that of a man who believes he is on the winning side. He had allied himself with the very faction Theron had just spent months dismantling. He does not yet know how precarious his position is. His gaze sweeps the room, and then it lands on her. His eyes widen in shock, then narrow in disbelief. A slow, ugly smirk spreads across his handsome face. He sees her simple dress, her position in the shadows. He thinks he understands. He thinks she is some pet, a rustic amusement the king picked up and will soon discard. He excuses himself from his companions and begins to make his way toward her, his movements smooth and predatory. Seraphine's stomach clenches. The old fear, the ghost of the girl he broke, whispers to her. For a moment, she wants to shrink back, to disappear into the stone. But then she feels it, a pulse of warmth and strength down the bond from Theron. He has not seen Maximilian, but he has felt her flicker of fear. He glances her way, his amber eyes finding hers across the vast hall. He cannot see who approaches her, but his gaze is a question, a promise. I am here. It is all she needs. She straightens her spine. She lifts her chin. She will not hide. Maximilian reaches her, his presence trailing the scent of expensive cloying cologne. "Seraphine," he says, his voice a low, condescending purr. "What a surprise. I must confess, I never imagined you would find your way into a place like this. You seem rather out of your element." "Lord Maximilian," she replies, her voice cool and even. She does not give him the satisfaction of her fear. "I heard the king found some woman in the woods," he continues, his eyes roving over her in a demeaning appraisal. "I should have known it would be you. You always did have a taste for the feral. Tell me, has he tired of you yet? When he does, and he will, perhaps I can find a place for you. Something suitable for your condition." The insult is meant to shatter her, to remind her of her place as his discarded, broken thing. But the words have no power over her anymore. They are echoes from another life. "I have a place," she says simply. At that moment, the Chancellor's voice finally falters. A sudden silence falls over the great hall. Theron has raised his hand. He steps down from the dais, his movements commanding the absolute attention of every person in the room. The crowd parts before him like the sea before a storm. His gaze is locked on her, on the man standing too close to her. As he approaches, his eyes finally fall on Maximilian, and recognition dawns. A flicker of something ancient and lethal enters his gaze. The temperature in the hall seems to drop by 10 degrees. Maximilian pales, the smug confidence draining from his face as he realizes who he has been insulting. He stammers, attempting a bow. "Your Majesty, I was just reacquainting myself with an old... Theron does not even look at him. His eyes are only for Seraphine. He stops before her, and the raw, unadorned love in his gaze is so potent, so absolute, it silences every whisper, every thought in the entire hall. He holds out his hand to her. She places her hand in his. His fingers close around hers, warm and strong. A perfect fit. Without a word, he turns and leads her through the stunned, silent crowd, back toward the throne. He walks her up the steps of the dais, past the bewildered chancellor, until she is standing beside him, beside the great iron throne of the north. He turns to face the court, his arm still holding her hand. "The coronation is not complete," he says, his voice ringing with power and authority. "It is the voice of the king. There is one more crown to be bestowed." From a velvet cushion held by a trembling attendant, he takes a second crown. It is not a circlet of iron, but a delicate, beautiful thing wrought of silver and moonlight, crafted to look like intertwined branches of willow and wolfsbane. He turns to her, and in front of the entire northern court, in front of the man who cast her aside for being unworthy, King Lysander gets down on one knee. A collective gasp ripples through the hall. A king kneels for no one. "Seraphine of the Wolfwood," he says, his voice now soft, for her alone, yet it carries to every corner of the silent room. "You found me when I was lost. You healed me when I was broken. You taught a king who knew only duty and war what it means to have a home. You are my bond, my heart, my queen. Will you rule by my side?" Tears well in her eyes, hot and joyful. This is not about politics or power. It is a declaration, a healing, a final triumphant rewriting of her past. "Yes," she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. "Always." He rises and gently, reverently, places the silver crown upon her head. It settles in her hair as if it were always meant to be there. Then he leans in and kisses her, a soft, tender kiss full of love and promise, sealing their vow in front of the entire world. The silence is broken by a single, enthusiastic clap. It is Zephyr beaming from the side of the throne. His joyful clap is then joined by another, then another, until the entire hall erupts in a thunderous, roaring ovation. Seraphine looks out over the sea of faces, no longer wary or shunning, but filled with a new awe and respect. Her gaze finds Lord Maximilian. He is ashen-faced, forgotten, a small, insignificant man witnessing the ascension of the woman he deemed worthless. He is watching her happiness, and he is invisible. He is nothing. Theron's arm slides around her waist, pulling her close to his side. Zephyr runs to her, wrapping his small arms around her legs. She rests her hand on his head, her other hand still clasped in her husband's. Her king, her son, her family. She looks up at Theron, at the fierce love shining in his amber eyes, and a profound sense of peace settles deep in her soul. She had fled to the edge of the world to escape her pain, to hide from a life where her greatest qualities, her compassion, her quiet strength, her deep capacity to love, were seen as flaws. She had believed she was broken, but her perceived weakness had been her greatest strength all along. It had not led to her destruction, but to her destiny. It had led her here, to this moment, to this man, to this love that was wild and true and absolute. She was not the hidden Omega girl shunned by the world. She was the Alpha King's heart. She was home.